So talk a little bit about Democratic Congress. We all, many of the people out there in our listening audience, got behind the president, the new president, and rooted for more Democratic victories. Uh, but on the other hand, those of us who've been around fighting the fight for many years know that the Democrats weren't always the good guys. That they kind of came out of the old labor movement in the 30s. They kind of ended up being co-opted and joining the elite ruling class. And now here we are rooting for them. And I think that we're probably, from my way of looking at it, we're probably in a united front kind of a position where things are dire and we have to move forward. So we're working with a lot of people who may not agree with us totally. But give us your sense of the future of the political scene here in the country with a Congress that is majority Democrat.
Well, Michael, I've always been a Democrat. I was a Democrat as a 10-year-old. I'm a Democrat today. And I'm a Democrat in a big D and a small d way and always will be. But the Democratic Party that I'm proud to be a part of has got a few problems. First, number one, it's been over almost a half a century, almost 50 years since the Democrats delivered anything for their base, the working people. The last thing they really did that was New Deal-like was pass Medicare in 1964, a great and special and even sacred thing. But that's the last thing we've done.
What about civil rights movement?
Well, the civil rights movement was great, but that was an extension of the New Deal coalition. It wasn't, and it was a benefit to the old New Deal coalition because it led to a more enlightened, more diverse country. That also took place 50 years ago, or almost 50 years ago.
Time
But
flies.
in terms of economic security, in literally raising the standard of living that people have, the last thing the Democrats did was Medicare. I'm running because it's time that we did something for our base and not just say, for example, save Social Security. We've got to increase it. We've got to increase the payout. We're paying something like, well, the OECD says that the average payout of Social Security is about 2/3 of people's working income in other countries. That's the average. The United States is not even up to 40. And I've been going door to door, knocking on the doors of older people in this district, and they're telling me, hey, I live on $6.90 a month. And when they hear that I'm actually proposing to raise Social Security, which we can do with a combination of a state tax, raising the payroll tax, a more progressive tax system, not overnight, but gradually get it up to 50, 55. Ultimately, I hope in the next 2 decades, closer to 60, 65%. When they hear that, first, they're incredulous that there's actually a politician who's proposing to raise Social Security for them. And second, they grab me by the sleeve many, many times and say in low voices, I'm for you. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to do something for our base.
All right, well, if they're for you, and a lot of people are,
I have to get to them all by election day. That's the problem. I'll tell you this, Michael. If I could stand in front of every senior in this district for 30 seconds, I would win this election in a landslide. I still think we're going to win, but that's the problem, getting that message out to them. We're not going to come down there to tell you that we're going to save Social Security or that maybe we have to curb entitlements. I'm not saying that to them. I'm saying it's going up.
Well, I know this is sort of a trick question.
I like trick questions.
If I said to you, so suppose you don't win, do you see yourself as this first outing in electoral politics as a way to get some name recognition and notoriety and to start to build a base that would enable you to go at it again? I know you're going to win it, but what would you say?
Come on, I'm never going to get name notoriety. People can't spell Geoghagen. They
couldn't.
stumble over it, Geoghagan. It's never occurred to me to
Say
try
that
and do
again.
that.
Spell that again.
Spell that again. 3 G's. There aren't many names with three G's in them except in Azerbaijan. And this is an Irish name. So that's not the point of it. And besides, I've written a lot of books. And if before this election, if you went on Google, you'd find my name all over the place. And as my mother said to me, for somebody nobody's ever heard of, you're pretty well known. And I don't need that. My pleasure in life is writing on the side and filing lawsuits for people that are working people. And it is my pleasure. I have mixed feelings about leaving Chicago. I have mixed feelings about going into a political world where you start to have to watch what you say. I have very mixed feelings about that. So, but I very much think that if I don't take this moment to argue for the causes in Congress that I've been fighting for in the courts, I'm betraying the people that I've been representing for the last 30 years. I mean, it would be a cop-out. So that's why I took this chance. If there had been somebody else in the race arguing these things, believe me, I would not have run. If there had been any one of a number of pretty good politicians, we have about 3 or 4 really good ones in the state who had decided, I'm going to leave what I'm doing now and run for a 5th congressional. It wouldn't have occurred to me to do this. But because of the field, and I'm not trying to knock anybody in particular, it's just whatever you may think of them, and some of them have progressive voting records, they'll vote for what Nancy Pelosi wants them to vote for, and I'm sure they'll come back with ADA ratings that are appropriate. I'm not looking for an appropriate ADA rating or having just a progressive voting record. I'm interested in raising issues and forcing Democrats to talk about things that they otherwise would not have to talk about. So raising Social Security, explaining why single payer is not just a nice idea, but a necessity given the structural trade deficit we have and the need to assume healthcare costs from companies like GM and Chrysler so that we don't keep having these debacles because our labor costs are too high due to health insurance, stopping the bank bailout, putting interest rate caps on banks. The other candidates, God bless them, they're a million miles away from talking about this and won't talk about it until somebody forces them to talk about it. That's why I decided to run.